What's up, guys? Ransel here. In today's video, we're going to talk about one of important characters in Guardian Tales lore, the one prophesied to bring chaos to the world, a figure known as the Savior. To understand why he became like this and what led him down this dark path, we need to go back to his origin. There's a video by Bredory that already explains this. If you want to know more details, you can watch his video, or if you prefer reading, check out this article written by Guardian Tales Fandom. But if I were to explain it, his origin story goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a businessman from Earth. He was rich, genius, and, most importantly, mysterious. One day, while he was observing outer space, he discovered a planet that strangely looked the same as Earth that later named Tetis. He then sent 13 chosen individuals to survey the planet. As the space shuttle carrying those astronauts approached Tetis, it suddenly disappeared, shocking everyone working on the project. With no contact from the astronauts, the project was eventually considered a failure. 8 years later, the foundation created by the businessman liquidated their businesses to establish a secret research institute. 2 years after that, the institute received unexpected data from Tetis and confirmed to have been sent by the 13 astronauts. Those data included information regarding Tetis, the astronauts' condition, and a newly discovered microorganism that later named Labos bacteria by the businessman. The businessman was so happy to find that creature. He and other researchers then tried to manufacture it. Once they succeeded, they conducted an experiment using mice to activate the bacteria. Following hundreds of conducted experiments, they found that once Labos bacteria active from dormancy, it will degrade all organic matter in organism, and when synthesized with organic matter, it creates particles that can do magic things. Amazed by the results, the businessman wanted to push the research further. He suggested to change the specimen from mice to humans. However, other researchers rejected the idea because it was very unethical and called him a maniac for that suggestion. A few days later, while the businessman eating mashed potato and onion soup, he had an epiphany about his mission, his achievement, and his manifest destiny.
I get it now. All the deeds I did to change the world is actually barely keeping the huge flow steady. I am the beginning of the end. Only I can accomplish this.
I think at that point, the businessman knew about the world was trapped in an endless loop, referring it as a huge flow and intended to destroy it. With this newfound purpose, he decided to release the bacteria into the wild, causing Earth to be infested with Labos bacteria. Earth became uninhabitable, and many people died as a result of this incident. However, during desperate time, the businessman came to aid the humanity. He guided the people on how to adapt to the bacteria and utilize the magic particles it created. Human on Earth then considered him as the savior for what he had done. Together they started to build the mothership and established a mission to make planet Tetis as their new home. The mission: taking over Tetis. Years passed, and the mothership was finally completed. Some people were selected to board on it, while the rest faced a different fate. There were two possible ends for them in my speculation. It was either they would be used to create antibodies and be used as energy for the crystal, so the selected ones could survive, or they were left to die on that dying planet. But either way, their mothership launched toward Tetis, leaving Earth behind. While in space, they still continued their research and built additional ships to prepare for potential challenges on the new planet. Eventually, the mothership arrived near Tetis, where they discovered many creatures had inhabited it. I think at that point, Savior obtained records of previous worlds from the guide and received a revelation, allowing his astral body to go into Heavenhold to gather information regarding the hero in the loop, which is the night. While in Heavenhold, the Savior was paying attention to the night, who the records foretold would become his nemesis. He noticed there was a small baby who lowered the synchronization between the knight and the champion sword. The sword the knight was prophesied to use to kill him according to the records. The Savior memorized this information just in case it was needed in the future. Now that he found the main thing for the loop to happen, he planned to occupy Tetis by force so that he and his people could continue living, and perhaps there would be a chance to destroy that miserable loop. To achieve that, he first used memory manipulation device to alter his people's memories, making them believe that Tetis was actually Earth, which had been seized by the inhabitants of Tetis, whom they considered tainted beings. This way, their invasion would be seen as a rightful effort to reclaim their homeland. He then created a prophecy that directly contradicted with the records for his people. In his prophecy, he proclaimed that, at the end of time, all tainted beings would be wiped out and mankind of Earth would finally reoccupy their homeland. Afterward, he fully embraced his title as the Savior, positioning himself as the one who would lead humanity to salvation, ensuring his people would place their trust in him without question. Now their motivation was clear, and their belief in the need to cleanse tainted beings had been firmly established. All they had to do was prepare their armies for the impending war. The Prophesied War. After 10 years of preparation, they finally ready to invade Tetis. For their first strike, they immediately attacked the knight using cannon in their mothership, intending to erase their biggest obstacle quickly. However, to the Savior's surprise, the knight was saved by a blonde-haired figure, whom he realized was actually Camilla's sister from the future. Stunned by her unexpected arrival, as she wasn't mentioned in the records, Savior remembered her. But that was not the only surprise. Camilla, the Queen of Canterbury Kingdom, decided to betray Lili and refused to follow the scenario in the records. Lili is one of the guides who keep the world from looping. Camilla asked the Savior to grant her power to escape Lili's control, doing so to protect her beloved younger sister, the princess, who was being targeted by Lili. The Savior agreed on the condition that Camilla reveal everything she knew to him. She then willingly shared her knowledge and joined him in a discussion on how to prevent the scenario in the records from coming to pass, so the ending scenario in the records wouldn't happen. Their discussion concluded that the knight must never met Savior with the champion sword. Once their discussion ended, the Savior helped Camilla to make her body immune to Lili's possession and began to construct a plan on how to remove the knight from this world. As the Savior observing the knight's journey, he was astonished by how the knight managed to overcome every challenge and eventually obtaining 7 of the champions, even with the interference of Beth, the dark magician. This seemed to confirm the truth of the records he got, and it also reinforced his suspicion of there were those who wanted the world to follow the predetermined scenario. When all of Beth's plans were thwarted by the knight, she began to feel deep resentment toward him and resolved to kill him in Rah Empire. However, the records of previous worlds reveal that Beth would die if she fought the knight there, so the Savior ordered her not to act recklessly. But leaving the knight free posed another risk, as he might foil Beth's plans again. The Savior recalled how Camilla's sister from the future had saved the Knight during their first attack, and wondered if her arrival was the result of someone distorting the future. And if it was, then who is that person? Perhaps this was the time to remove the Knight from this world, thought him. He then subtly influenced Beth with an idea.
What if the Knight was thrown into another dimension?
Beth was astounded after she heard what Savior said. She had never imagined such an idea could exist, yet she didn't reject it, believing the plan she got from Savior's idea would bring them success. She asked Savior's permission to do her tactic. Beth delighted in Savior's approval of her plan. She then requested a massive amount of crystal from material department without explaining her motive. They still gave it to Beth because Savior had allowed it. This decision resulted in an unknown purpose written in the Invaders' count book. Afterward, she set out to confront the Knight and execute her plan. The purpose of the crystals was soon revealed, and her plan went smoothly. Beth and the Invaders rejoiced, thinking that the greatest obstacle to reclaiming their home was finally removed. Yet, one thing for sure, every one of the Invaders didn't know the real motive behind it, except for one person. The alternate timeline. When Beth banished the Knight to another dimension, an alternate timeline emerged. In this timeline, events continued without the Knight's presence, allowing the Invader invasion to proceed smoothly. In just 10 years, they had occupied nearly all of Tetis, except for Heavenhold. During their successful invasion, something unexpected happened. The Knight suddenly reappeared in this world, looking exactly as he did 10 years ago. His return made Beth furious. She then launched an attack on him and other tainted warriors, but unfortunately she ended up failing. Savior, who saw this, ordered Beth and other Corps' commander to minimize contact with the Knight. Beth disregarded his order and instead waited in Heavenhold Castle, wanting to kill the Knight with her own hands. Sadly, her action led her to her death. Leaving behind nothing but painful memories, Beth disappeared from this world. As if triggered by her demise, a portal suddenly appeared, bringing the Knight to his original timeline. The Tetitians were joyed by the result of this war. They managed to beat Beth and reclaim Heavenhold. However, on another side, Beth's death, Elizabeth's death, was grieved by Savior. She was a great Corps commander and a loyal soldier as well. But there was nothing he could do, since it was inevitable and it was needed for his plan to succeed. Savior placed a flower at the spot where Beth had fallen, expressing his deep gratitude for her remarkable deeds. After he bid his farewell to her, he turned his focus to the true purpose behind all this events. Camilla's sister. At last, after gambling massive amount of crystals, sacrificing one of his finest soldiers, and waiting for 10 years, his prediction proved correct. The figure he saw during their attack on Canterbury Kingdom was really the person before his eyes. The excitement was filling Savior's heart. All of those prophecy that made people unable to escape the predetermined fate that made the world prisoned in a loop could finally be broken. He then asked Camilla's sister to go back to 10 years ago and save the night. Princess Aisha of Rah Empire, confused by his action. Why would the leader of the invaders want to save his enemy? Savior explained that it was because the knight and Camilla's sister were needed to destroy the destined scenario. They didn't understand what that meant, but Camilla's sister couldn't reject his request since Savior forced her. Savior then opened up the portal and Camilla's sister entered it. With that, she successfully returned to 10 years ago when the invaders carried out their first attack. Without wasting much time, she immediately flew towards the knight and saved him. Back to original timeline. At some point after the knight was drifted to another time dimension, Savior and Lili had a few negotiations. I think Savior tried to convince Lili to deviate their actions from the prophecy. However, all of those negotiations were ruptured by Lili. 3 months later, the knight finally returned to this timeline. Seeing his comeback made Lili felt relieved. During the latest negotiation with Savior, she praised him for his attempt to drift the knight to other timeline. She suggested that perhaps what he did was just part of the system itself. Instead of replying to her remark, Savior questioned Lili about Camilla's sister, who had been involved when the invader attacked Canterbury Kingdom. Lili was startled that Savior knew of the anomaly, yet she remained firm in her belief in the prophecy, insisting that she was merely a small error. Lili then ruptured their negotiations just like the others before. But Savior didn't care, as he already did the thing that may break the loop. Meanwhile, at another place, Beth and other invaders were shocked to see the knight return only after 3 months after she had cast him into another timeline. Due to this failure in her plan, Beth got fired from her position and expelled from the cores of the invader. Savior didn't do anything about that, as it was the only way to save Beth, and that would make variables to destroy the loop increase. Although it made Death lost her faith in him and maybe hated him, it was better than needing the predetermined fate, where Beth died at the hands of the knight. Just as he predicted, Beth met the knight in Lilith Tower, but she no longer held a grudge against him, causing Beth to avoid a fight and continue living. What Savior had done truly shook the flow of fate, causing the guides who kept the prophecy to panic. By sending Camilla's sister to the past, ensured the knight's survival. It also resulted in Beth's survival, as she didn't die in Rah Empire. These changes triggered a chain of events that unfolded differently from the records of previous worlds. Now, with all of this revealed, one question pops up in my head. What will happen next? All right, I know that I'm not the person who has the information to tell you about this, But please, let me speculate, let me theorize, let me cook. So from World 12 to 15 we see the scenarios start to shift from the prophecy, but the endings are still mostly the same. The knight overcomes all challenges and continue his journey. In World 16 to 18, however, things are getting out of hand. Lili failed to possess Camilla's body. Caden, the legendary hero, has reached the unreachable, and the knight nearly approached the unauthorized truth, which I think is the secret about the loop. The guides also said that the knight and little princess will no longer fight the savior. Of course, this was really a big problem for them. To prevent things get worse, the guides who want the world to follow the scenario decide to connect to the origin. I think this is the thing that leads us to the event where an asteroid will crash planet Tetis and form a destruction in World 19, causing the world to be forcefully reset. The asteroid is later shown in World 20, when the knight and savior receive a revelation from who I think is the guide who wants to destroy the loop. The asteroid is almost the size of the land we see on the planet, so the explosion could potentially destroy Tetis. Therefore, in my speculation, after the knight and his comrades reclaim Canterbury Kingdom, savior and knight will join forces to prevent the asteroid from crashing. But keep in mind what I just said is merely a speculation. Okay, that's it for Savior's story. Now let's jump into the explanation and other theories I have that will be explained by my grandson.
Thank you, grandfather, for your beautiful narrative. Okay, let me explain a few things that maybe make some people curious. Like 1. When the businessman liquidated his businesses to build a research institute, 2 years later, the data from the astronauts was received by that institute. How did he seem to know the data would be sent? Especially when the astronauts had unexpectedly disappeared in space. Okay, to answer that, my theory is he received a revelation from the guide who also wanted to destroy the loop, telling him there will be a microorganism that can evolve human into greater being. That's how he seemed to know what would happen in the future. 2. Who are Camilla, Lili, and Little Princess, and what are their connections? Camilla is the queen of Canterbury Kingdom, who carries out tasks from Lili, the former queen of that kingdom from 500 years ago, who later becomes a guide who ensures the prophecy or the scenarios from the records of previous worlds continue to occur. The task is to offer her body to be possessed by Lili, so she can actively prevent the world from deviating from the prophecy by banishing things that cause it. Little Princess is Camilla's sister, who is not mentioned in the prophecy. Lili identifies her as an anomaly, so she tries to eliminate her. Camilla, who knows Lili's intentions, decides to betray her and join forces with Savior so she can save her sister. And that's about them and their connection. Alright, I guess there's no more question. Now let's talk about the interesting theory my grandfather has. That is, the Savior was actually not the businessman. In the records from Orbital Lift, it shows that the businessman was a very ambitious person. A maniac who did everything for science. He seems like someone who doesn't care about humanity at all. But in World 11 Nightmare, he said that all he wanted was to create a world where his people can live peacefully. Bro, he was the one who released the bacteria that made Earth uninhabitable for his people to live peacefully. That's why I think Savior was not the businessman, but actually his friend who opposed his idea of using human as specimen. So, the scenario was like this. After the businessman had an epiphany, he decided to burn down the research institute as a cover-up and released the bacteria in a department. His action made his friend sent him a note that said,
"You can fool others, but you can't fool me. When you recruit me to this place, you should have expected I wouldn't allow such atrocity. You spent your whole life in academia with me."
It's not true. You let it loose. Before burning down the research department as a cover-up, I knew all the researchers and laboratories has been rearranged. What happened to all the people who moved to a department for the 2 resting areas? When we discussed using man as a specimen, me and other senior researchers rejected, and you were so full of yourself, as if you were a god or a savior. No, you're not a savior nor a god. You're just a maniac. Science built upon small sacrifices. Humanity breakthrough. Bullshit! Don't mess around with my family. Inside or outside the lab, I will seriously kill you. Don't forget, everything in this lab, including memory manipulation machine, we built them together. Maybe I know it better than you. I warned you.
Subsequently of this event, he decided to kill the businessman. Once he died, his friend became the savior with the purpose of creating a peaceful world for his people. After he received those records from the guide who are against the loop. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps the businessman experienced some character development that changed him to be a better person. Nevertheless, that's my explanation and my grandfather theory, guys. What do you think? If you like this video, don't forget to press that like button, and see you in the next one.